Hello out there. Welcome to another edition of What's the Score? We're going to be talking about a surprise book, although I guess maybe the title has revealed it by now. I'm not sure.
It might have gotten out somewhere, but
Of course, you're watching it later. You know what this is going to be.
yeah, if you don't yet know, I can see some guesses already in the comments there. Sorry about the time discrepancy, by the way. We scheduled this episode on YouTube before daylight savings kicked in, and it was scheduled at UK time on my time. So It initially said 6 o'clock, which is wrong, but we changed the time, and we're here live at 1 p.m. Eastern as usual, and time will reset, I think, in the next couple of weeks.
And we are talking about this lovely book here that I'm blocking. The Match.
We have Daniel floating around there. It is, as you can see, Harlan Coben's new release, The Match, which I believe is a sequel. It's one of these things that we'll do. I won't dig too deeply into the text as we go through all of the reports and things today, because, of course, it's brand new. It's the sequel to The Boy from the Forest, I think is the title of the first one. Harlan Coben, obviously, huge thriller author. This book came out, I think, about 5 days ago.
Oh, wow. So fresh off the press.
Yeah, straight off the press, and already a top 10 seller on Amazon for suspense novels. So yeah, people will know Harlan Coben. I think in her email today announcing this episode, Jocelyn added a little hint in there. If anybody picked up on that, she said, "Don't be a stranger," because of course Harlan Coben's novel The Stranger, that series was adapted and is on Netflix, along with I believe one called Close. I haven't sat and watched them all, but
Close on the book cover.
Stay Close. That's it. So I think the series is just called Close.
Oh,
something like that. But if we have any Harlan Coben fans here today, I think you'd be very pleased with this, and do let us know. Sound off in the comments. Do you like Harlan Coben? If good, twisty, suspenseful stuff, or no?
And as you might be aware from previous episodes about the score, suspense is a fun genre to look at from a mechanical standpoint. So I'm really curious to dive into those nitty-gritty numbers and geek out about all that stuff.
Yes, let's. I suppose we'll kick off. Let's get geeky. One thing
we always do around here. So.
And one thing we always like to do with these, once we jump in, I'll share the screen here to make sure everybody can see the various tabs and reports there. So we're looking at the fingerprint and kind of looking at those numbers in terms of indicators in each of the sections. Some of you out there in the audience may have an idea, or if you want to take a guess at what kind of summary score we might be starting out with when it comes to The Match.
Yeah, that would be very, very interesting. I will say, for those of you who have watched this before, you might know that often suspense does score well because of the readability. These are tend to be, I don't want to say easy reads, that sounds kind of negative, but they tend to really capture your attention, shorter sentences, shorter paragraphs, and so that readability score can be rather high, which can help the summary score a lot. But you just never know. Everybody has their own style, so sometimes that's not always the case.
Yeah, indeed. Well, I will.
I'm going to say, though, I don't know. I'm going to be really maybe generous. I don't know if that's the right word. I'm going to say like 85. I don't know why. Let's see.
Surprising.
Wow. 71. Okay, see, I set that up really well, didn't I? I was like, usually they're really high, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, so something interesting is going on from an authorial choice. Let's find out what it is.
And this is why I really love doing this kind of series as well, and using these kind of novels to give context to kind of what you're doing in your own work as an author, because I know people sometimes get a bit freaked out when a score, might consider 71 and go, oh, it's so low, I don't get it. Here we are, bestseller, hot off the press, and you don't have anything to worry about. It's always getting to the point where you are happy with the work. Just let the score guide you. So I think this is a good session for a bit of a pat on the back for everybody. And we could have a look, just a quick glance at the summary score here. So there's the things. We're looking at about 90,000 words. Creeping up on that for this novel. I'll skip quite quickly over these because we're going to hit some of these individually. And of course, we'll look at power words when we get there. But word frequency, it's quite clear that Wilde is a main character in this one, I think.
There we go.
Along with Peter, Matthew, I think that's Jan. Yeah. And Freya's frequency is wild
Ooh.
said.
There you go, Tammy.
And
Got
that
it
gives
right
us
on.
a little bit of a a little bit of
Yeah,
a
and
hint
other
of what's
character
going on in
names.
dialogue tags. Said being most common here. That's a good sign, I think, for
But
moving on.
the woods. And we did see
The
the woods on the
woods.
cover, so it makes sense.
In the
Major setting.
woods.
Yeah.
Speaking of dialogue, let's have a little look at that first. Dialogue tags. What have we got going on here in the match?
Seems like a lot of dialogue tags.
There's a lot of dialogue, a lot going on in this, but huge on the side of said and asked here.
Which makes
So,
sense.
Harlan Coben following the rules, as any good author should. Said and asked, and some others. What kind of others do we have? So, said obviously is the huge, by far, far and away the predominant tag. Asked, we have things like added, continued, countered, repeated down here. They're not crazy tags. They're of course they're alternatives, but they're simple. It's not. There's sobbed again. I quite like sobbed. Sobbed is a good one. Most things just kind of using sparingly or with good intent. Now the novel does get a little bit of a ding. We can see here because of I think it's the amount of dialogue that's in this book compared to a kind of standard best-selling novel that we would see of this length. Because you can see here said 648 instances, and it does get red flagged there, removed by 248. So there's much more dialogue going on in this book than we would necessarily tend to see, and that will drag the score down a little bit. So again, just bringing the score down to that kind of 71 mark is not a condemnation. You can just see it when you look through here. Okay, there's more dialogue than it expects, so it's not actually a problem. Certainly not condemnation for the book. And I think the overall result here in terms of the split between the tags is a really good one. Top marks, Harlan Coben.
Well, it makes sense. Again, that quick pace often with suspense. You don't want to get bogged down with a lot of unusual verbs in your dialogue.
Yeah, we'll look at readability towards the end, but I will say, kind of spoiler alert on that front, it's a very readable book, very accessible. And if we're looking at adverbs in dialogue, so does Harlan Coben attach adverbs to his dialogue to try to sort of punch that up and cheat his way through? Certainly not.
No.
While this is
somebody's a Stephen King fan on that one.
Yeah, and I mean we can clearly see that the book has more dialogue than we expect. So obviously dialogue heavy. There's a lot of talking going on. Yet even with that fact, 1% of dialogue tags include an adverb throughout the entire novel. And these are just things like slowly. Obviously, that's probably like said slowly or repeated slowly, softly, finally, fiercely, mockingly is one that I'm not a big fan of mockingly. But bluntly, yeah, kind. Overly, firmly, excitedly. And nothing overused. So really good, and this is it. This little selection here is the entirety of any adverbs that are attached to dialogue tags throughout. So again, that's a really, really good show from Harlan Coben or his editor, if they were responsible for knocking it back. And adverbs in general. Let's have a look. So we've got a lot of red here, but I don't think it's all that bad. Certainly, we're right up here towards
makes
the
sense since they avoided it in the dialogue.
Yeah, clearly still following the Stephen King train of thought, I think, here, making sure that adverbs are used. I'm just going to use the word sparingly. Right.
Yes.
So,
although it is interesting that it is so low, considering how dialogue heavy it is, which means I imagine this dialogue comes across as very brisk. I'm not to criticize it, but I imagine that's just how it comes across.
That's true. Yeah, one of the things that, and again, this would end up bringing the overall score down a bit if you're writing really natural dialogue and you have a whole lot of talking throughout the whole novel. Well, yes, you're naturally going to have more adverbs showing up, more filler showing up, all these words that you would normally get kind of red flagged on in other circumstances, but they've got to be there, to make the dialogue seem natural. So again, that's a completely contextual thing, which is why I'm always stressing when you're using AutoCrit with your own books is don't obsess over the score in that way. It's just kind of, you can see and you understand that, okay, this is a dialogue heavy book, the people need to talk naturally. I can deal with that or ignore the rest.
Yeah, the thing I expect, I'm just going to jump ahead because I don't really know, but I'm going to suggest that there's going to be a lot of filler words and generic descriptions. That's what I'm thinking.
Possibly. So the frequent adverbs here we have really, probably anyway, and
Probably all dialogue.
what kind of things are we looking at here? So really, remove about 59. So it's close to kind of half of these could go. Probably in much the same situation, 35, remove out of 60. And anyway, again, same kind of deal, 20, remove by 22 of 39. So across the board, it's quite a strong recommendation for cuts. But again,
well, the really is probably again because of the dialogue, right? Because really is not something you're going to put in prose. So the fact that it's so dialogue heavy, it has a lot more reallys than normal, is what I would
think. That said, if we look through the some of the
never mind. I'm about to get undercut by the software.
not entirely, Daniel, don't worry. We have really here, of course, these are showing up here, and this is in dialogue. You know, you're really telling me, and I really don't get this. Really, anyway, you know, they're showing up, and again, dialogue here. There was a spot that I noticed with really earlier. That was in the narration. I'm trying to find that here now. I was going to make a fool of me. Wherever it was towards the beginning. It may be when we get to filler words, actually, that one will show up. Let's hold off on that for a minute. But yeah, you can see most of these. I think Daniel is quite right here. A lot of the adverbs and things are showing up is mostly in dialogue. And you can see already, I mean, this is just the beginning and we're just flicking through a little bit. Again, I don't want to give too much away about this story, but you can already see how dialogue driven it is. You know, there's dialogue in nearly everything here.
And also how long you have to go before you see an adverb. At least the excessive ones, you know. Yeah.
So very clean. Very clean.
Yes.
And let's see our filler words. Okay, yeah, so we'll get to filler now. What are we doing? So before I even bring up the summary, you can see there's not a big list. Now we are up in here because we're moved about 644 in total. So that's a lot of potential filler words to cut down. And what I tend to see, I think what we all see over and over again, is our number one filler word being that. And it would be variations of it as well, you know, that and that's. So far and away, that is running away with the prize there for most overused filler word. And we have here, where were we? That 1,295, removed by 327. So some work to do there if you did want to cut that down. However, you know,
it's not as many filler words as I might have expected, considering all the dialogue, to be honest.
Yeah, that's true. And it's all contextual, again, at the end of the day. So you can look through here. Certainly here stands out. This is the beginning part that I was mentioning just a minute ago. Lots of that in there. But when you read it, you know, if you read it back to yourself, there were rumors, of course. Some believed that Wilde had been born into a mysterious and secretive local mountain tribe, that the little boy had run off or been handled in a somewhat negligent manner, etc., etc. When you read the passage out loud to yourself like that, you know, the that's are there for rhythm. They're there to give us, you know, lend a certain tone to the narration because, of course, this isn't dialogue. This is narrative prose. But the that's are working. They work for me anyway. I know some people that would look at this and think, well, you know, again, go back to the strict rule of a filler word is, does the sentence make sense if the word is removed? And some may be tempted to just take them out because, you know, something like this. Others theorized that the little boy's memories were faulty. He couldn't really have survived on his own in the harsh woods for years. That could work. It'll take a little bit of, you know, a rejigging of the sentence, perhaps a semicolon there or something to tie that together. But I think it's fine. For me, it's absolutely fine. Kind of keeping the that's in there. So again, this is something to take into your own workflow is that understanding and understand that you have the control. If you're using that to lend a certain tone to the writing and again, to match the rhythm so people are reading it, stick with it. You don't have to get rid of everything.
It's true. I mean, filler words do help with rhythm. You know, they are filler words. Sometimes it's not even meaning. It's just for the pattern of the sentence, you know, to land right. You just kind of need that breath. There's a lot of reasons for filler words to exist.
Yeah, and a lot of
connective tissue too. Like in that paragraph, in my opinion, it was really just kind of it was like the muscles in between the bones, you know, kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly what I was going to say. Looking at a part like this too, if you were really determined to get rid of these filler words and just not have them at all, it's going to necessarily change up the way that you construct your sentences. You're going to be
Yep.
writing differently. However, the way that Harlan Coben here wants to relay information to you is referring back to other things. So, for example, no good could come of this. He knew that, and that's a reference back to the previous statement. So that's the way it works, and that's are necessary. So here again, that is necessary for this sentence to work. If you wanted to do without that, it's going to have to be written differently, and maybe that's just not your style.
I do love this. I think I'll name my next main character that. That could be fun, especially if you're going a little absurdist. that. Like, how many that's could you form together in a sentence and it'd be grammatically correct? You could probably layer quite a few.
It was like, how badly can I make the AutoCrit platform react to my
you could
work?
definitely do that something, and it'd be grammatically correct.
Yeah, that knew that thing.
Right.
You probably get about 6 or 7 in a single sentence. That would be fairly hilarious.
If the last name is that, then it's that particular that something. So.
There's a challenge. Anybody in the audience, go and do that.
How many filler words can you put in a sentence and be grammatically correct? And bring it next time, and we can read them. It'll be fun.
I would love a laugh. Pacing. So we moved on to the pacing part here, and of course, this being a commercial thriller,
I'm expecting it to be pretty quick.
One would assume it's going to be pretty pacey, and
let's see.
It is.
Whoa!
Slow-paced paragraphs throughout the entire work, 1.99%.
Yeah, wow.
Could just go to 2, but it likes to be picky there. But
and what's fascinating about that is one of them is towards the beginning.
Yes, one of them is right at the beginning. If we look at our chart here, we can actually see this kind of cluster at the start is where things are initially, this kind of Act 1 here, I would assume. And this is where
that breakaway looks
the main cluster is of things being a little slower. And that's fine. You would think we might have a little bit of a faster start, but then slow down. The build-up is generally a slower spot. And that seems to be the case here, certainly. I'm thinking where we have this whole block here, with nothing slow paced. I'm going to guess our climax is somewhere around here.
Yeah,
this is ramping up to the big confrontation or whatever. I'm not sure exactly what this book is about, but I'll read it afterwards, and we'll see if I'm right. But yes, very pacey, really strong stuff. We got this, like Daniel said there. This is just in the beginning, so it's really just easing us in, and we got a little bit of slower spots there, but overall, it's fast.
It is fast. And don't panic, if your work is not less than 2% slow-paced paragraphs, it doesn't mean readers are going to be bogged down. There's plenty of other genres that tend to have longer paragraphs. That's quite low.
Indeed, yeah, that 2% is pretty low.
It's about as low as it gets. I think we have had ones under 1, haven't we, or something crazy like that?
We have. I think we have had ones under 1. I would need to go back and reference to be 100% certain, but I think something like Lee Child's Blue Moon.
Yeah, I was thinking like
certainly
Lee Child.
pacey. That might be it.
Yeah.
And passive indicators. I just wanted to have a look at this one again, because I always like to look at passive voice and what authors are doing with that, just kind of as a technique, because you get all this advice all the time. It's never use passive.
Ever.
Everything should be active all the time. Change this to active. Change this to active. If that would drive me insane. If I had kind of editorial feedback of that kind, passive, change it to active, change it to active. And the way I like to do this, just to look through quite quickly and easily in books and see what the author is up to, is using the passive phrasing option here in AutoCrit. So we've got the blue. So I just turn off the red. They can be quite confusing and hard to follow if you're writing in a past tense narrative. So I switch this one on, passive phrasing. So it'll actually just bring them up. So example, tell me again when you were fine. So it's looking for this the auxiliary verb and past participle connected to it. So you were conceived. Less worrisome, nothing really to do about passivity and dialogue. There's not a whole lot you can play with there. And looking through here, it seems most of it that I'm able to find is indeed in dialogue, most of it. So here we have their true images were hidden by Full Body Digital Animoji, whatever that is. Okay, yeah, like I said, little icons of animals, and something like that is absolutely fine. Technically, there's a passive construction there, but no problem at all. No problem at all. And more dialogue. Yeah, this absolutely looks fine to me. I'm not going to again dig too far into this for fear of spoiling something for somebody or for anybody.
No, it's like, and the killer was. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
Maybe
skip
there
right
is
to
a
the end. It's
killer,
like, oh
but
no.
I don't even know. Like, could be the trees are doing it. It's another
Looking
happening.
at showing versus telling, this is always a fun one. I know most of us are perpetually confused by this and find it difficult to deal with. But if you see this kind of thing in your results, again, don't worry too much. Look where kind of Harlan Coben has come in here. We're stuck way up in the excess. Showing versus telling indicators, again, just by the nature of them being indicators, it's may or may not be, but we want to draw your eye to what may be. Doesn't mean that they all have to go or that you do have to change them. Obviously, this book is perfectly great for commercial consumption. It's huge publisher, it's super popular bestseller, and yeah, here we are up in the excess. So again, don't worry yourself too much.
Probably some of it is just trying to be more, I don't want to say simplistic, that sounds a little negative, but readable, accessible. Also, in terms of action, if it's action heavy, which I imagine it might be, often you do have a lot more of those showing words because you just have to keep it going.
Yeah, you just want to keep moving. That's what I kind of found when I looked at it as well. The words that I would tend to go to in this kind of report is things like no, the real detail-oriented words here, like no, knew, felt, heard, those kind of things, because they're usually, if we find like no here, let's go. No is our biggest one, is it? 442. So you notice it, 1,129, but only remove about 4. So really not much going on there. But when it comes to no, 264. Usually when it comes to the word no, you'll find that if it's in the narrative, the narrative prose and not actually dialogue, it's dipping into the character's mind and saying he didn't know this, and that is telling. You're just telling the audience,
Yep.
this character doesn't know this. Is there a way, and technically speaking, it's like, okay, well, if you go by the rule of show don't tell, or like Daniel says, dramatize don't summarize, is
Thank you.
well, how can you show me that
Right.
the character doesn't know this information? But sometimes that's not pertinent. You just, like Daniel
Sometimes
said earlier,
it's not worth the
get on
effort
with it.
too. Yeah, exactly. Because you could say he didn't know why there was a spill on his carpet, or you could say he looked at the carpet, scratching his head. It's like, well, why don't you could just say the other, because maybe he's not a character that's just gonna go, stroking their beard. Maybe they're not gonna do that. And then if they're not gonna do that, then how do you tell the audience that the mysterious spill on the carpet has no origin that the character knows about, right? So sometimes you just have to come out with it. And with suspense, often they are mysterious. There's either mysterious elements, or perhaps the whole thing is like what's called an information plot, where it's about what characters know. So that might be a reason it's on their mind a lot and they're talking about it a lot, is because they're trying to figure out something.
Yeah, and we can see things like here. This is a block where we're just being given information about this character. It's just the narrator's just telling us about them. It was time to return to his remote eco capsule deep in the heart of the Ramapo Mountains. That was where he belonged, where he felt most at home. It's alone in the woods. And this kind of thing is, if somebody were to be really, really strict about this, is like, okay, well, how do you dramatize that? Can you have him talk about that, or show me in some way that this is where he wants to be, without just being, expositional with it, just laying it out there? However, in this kind of case, this is the very beginning. We're just getting to know this person, and we're getting, okay, it is a bit of an expositional dump to fill in their backstory and give us an idea of who they are, but that is fine. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And if you want to, again, keep the pace up and get moving and get into the plot and have people actually doing things that are interesting rather than dramatizing every single little thing, sometimes a little telling is absolutely fine. So you just want to look at that in your own work, I recommend definitely checking out these words like knew, felt, heard, the real active things, and know as well. Again, if you're just telling me stuff that a character knows or doesn't know, is it better for some of those things to be dramatized? I guess this is the question that you have to ask yourself. And don't be too worried or too afraid if you kind of go through all of that and your answers are fine to yourself, and you maybe change a few things or don't change a few other things, yet you're still coming in way up in the excess. Don't beat yourself up. Here's Harlan Coben.
It's always helpful, right? Whenever you want to break a rule, it's like, well, they broke it and they got away with it. Okay. I can do it.
Well, it is, a lot of the success, as far as I'm concerned, comes from modeling. Look at what's working, look at what people are doing, and do the same thing. Add a little spin on it. But
speaking of modeling, I do have a question, Gareth. So we didn't know what that summary score was at the beginning. At the end, are we going to adjust the comparison to something else?
I will. I think the for this novel, the best comparison, the closest to kind of go with, because we don't have Harlan as an author profile in the software. Maybe we'll be able to add him in at some point. But I went with mystery and suspense.
Okay. So I'll be curious to see how that adjusts things, because obviously the whole point of these reports is to compare them against common practices, right? And so if they are bucking the norm, well, it tells you that information, which can be very helpful. But to Garrett's point, it also shows you when you can get away with it, right?
And what can you get away with? On this one here, initial pronouns and names. So this one isn't comparative. We just like to take a look and see how many sentences, how is the author adding a bit of variety to the beginning of sentences here, and how many are starting with either a character name or a pronoun. Now, I know this could be a real toughie, and I know a number of people who, myself previously as well, I've changed my tune when it comes to it because I just worked harder on fixing it. But a number of people I know don't like to write first person. Because they end up having I, and I can't really work around it. I used to be exactly the same. I avoided it for that reason, but recently just, again, put more effort in and find ways to just be more...
if you're cognizant about it, you can work, you can deal with it, because obviously lots of people do write first person, and they're just not all I all the time.
Yeah, sometimes it doesn't flow quite as well. You have to come back for a bit more tidying up in a second draft to fix all those I's. If you do it that way, just getting it out and then rework the beginnings. But yes, really, this is all about avoiding that kind of repetition. You want to be keeping the starting of your sentences varied. And I'll let you make a guess, Daniel.
I'm guessing it's a lot.
Many? What kind of percentage?
I mean, there's a lot right just there. 60%? I don't know. That's probably way too high.
Oh, okay. Well, one of the things, a general rule, even though this isn't comparative within the software itself, from previous What's the Scores, looking at a lot of different books, we don't generally tend to see it going too high above 50. It's usually somewhere between 35 and 50.
That's why I went pretty crazy. But I probably could be wrong. 50.
And keeping up with what we see, 49.48%, more or less 50. Right on the money there.
So the high end of the range.
It's towards the high end of the range, yep, but still exactly what we expect to see. I would be shocked if we did see something like 60. But maybe we'll get there at some point in the future. The trend is bearing out for now. Maybe the next book we run, it'll be like 75 or something incredibly shocking. And by the same token, sentence starters. So we just look at this. Again, this is a percentage thing, connecting or starting sentences with a verb or conjunction. And 8.37% throughout the entire book. This one I like to look at, and I like to really be cognizant of this as well, because quite often starting a sentence with an ing verb, having a character do something, can lead to all sorts of problems. Not just in terms of the information that you're presenting, makes it actually more difficult to picture what's happening when you start with a verb like that. But it can also, we all know the particular issue that comes up when you can have people doing things at the same time that is impossible. They couldn't be doing things simultaneously, like running to the door, he opened it, kind of thing. You don't do both of those things at the same time. You run through the door and then you open it. So that kind of thing can happen. So it's something to really keep an eye on here. And of course, Harlan Coben's the Match, 8.37%.
All right.
Phrase frequency. I wanted to have a quick look at this, just in terms of repetition, because we all know, that's why for What's the Scores, I don't like to dig in entirely into repeated words and repeated uncommon words, because that's a lot of work.
It
You
is.
end up looking through every single line of the story for repetition. However, I do like to look at phrase frequency. This is something that Beth taught me, which I find really, really useful in my own workflow here, is going for the phrases and looking at the longest ones. So 4 words. When we hit the 4-word phrases, you're looking for things like that that really stand out, because the longer a phrase is, the more it's going to stick in the mind of the reader. And you don't want to overuse that kind of thing, because it becomes obvious. It really does. And a couple here that stand out for me. A lot of these are only, this is within the context of the entire novel. So something Wilde did not reply being used 4 times over the course of 90,000 words is not really going to be a problem.
No.
However, when
it
you get to the
generally
most
tends to
used,
be more of a thing when it's unusual words too, or if
yeah,
it's describing something in a unique way, but it just keeps doing it, which makes it no longer unique.
and I'm not going to click on through all mentions of this, but you will probably notice showing up as forward phrases is "Love is a battlefield," and
Little shout out to the song, huh?
that really stood up there. 23 uses of that. So I assume that song is going to be a core plot element here, having it used that many times, because of course that being a title of something stands out. It's unique, and if it wasn't integral to the plot, I would be worried about that. If I saw this in my own works, like, oh, why have I mentioned that song over and over again? It's not relevant to the plot. I just wanted to include it. Then I want to dial back on making too much of a point of it, because again, the more you make a point of things, it's like Chekhov's gun. Your readers start to assume that this is important, that you are pointing it out to me for a specific reason, and I'll start doing the little mind game of trying to figure out for myself what you're going to do with it and how it's actually going to be relevant. And if it isn't at all, it just disappears and drops off there. I've just wasted brain power, and I'm not going to be your friend.
I have to say, just looking over that opening, that is a good hook line at the beginning. At the age of somewhere between 40 and 42, didn't exactly know how old he was. He finally found his father. That's good. I mean, it's like, who am I to say? Of course it's good. But, it's a best-selling book. But, it makes sense. It's like, yeah, that's cool. That's got me interested,
Like Harlan Coben, you have Daniel's approval.
Exactly. You can sleep well now.
Wear it with pride. The other one that stood out for me here is the second one you can see here. Wilde shook his head. So 10. This is an action thing. What characters are actually doing physically, and
I appreciate Beth Koch's doing "Love's a Battlefield" lyrics now.
I find this really helpful in my own. I've talked about this before. One of my own stories, which is essentially just an extended action sequence. And each time the action kicked off again, I scrolled through the forward phrases and found something to the effect of, fell to their knees. And it seemed that it brought that really to the front for me. That was every time this kind of cyclical action kicked up again, people were falling to their knees in the middle of it. And that was happening over and over again. And that's not good. Again, that's just making every spurt of action feel the same as the previous ones, not mixing it up. So it helped me find that. And something like this stands out for me for that same reason. Wilde shook his head. Is this so he does it there and dialogue, follows up with the dialogue. Now again, it's a conversation. Wilde shook his head. They seem fairly nicely spread out here. It's big jumps. Wilde shook his head. So he does a lot of shaking his head. Wilde shook his head. And really the question is that intentional? I would have to read the novel
Vicky
to see
shook her head too, so you have 2 characters doing it.
Because I wonder if that's part of if Coben has actually developed that as an idea of a marker of the character, if you understand what I mean. Is kind of body language that they in particular use, in which case that's great. It reminds me of, the now famous Lee Child thing of Reacher said nothing. That's become a distinct marker of that character in all the books. Just Reacher said nothing. He stands there stoically silent, waiting for the next head to cave in. And that same kind of thing can come through here with Wilde shook his head. It's just making sure that it's actually intentional.
Yeah. Well, with another character doing it too, perhaps it's a way to show a connection between them as well.
Could be, yeah. And here we have Found in the Woods, Boy from the Woods. I think that, like I said, I think that's the title of the first book.
It was like, I had to remove a few head shakes. Yep, it can happen. You can have a character, what is it? The character in the Wheel of Time who's always tugging on the braid. That's a famous one that got on a lot of people's nerves.
There's the Reality Ralph podcast. And the Vile Man, and I really want to see what the Vile Man thing is, but I'm not going to click it because I know as soon as I do that, it's going to pull me right into spoiler territory.
Yeah, right.
So
he revealed
but a nice overview there, and I think it just helps to see how useful this report can be. It's I think the phrase frequency and word frequency as well, but phrase frequency is especially useful if it's something that you tend to overlook. I highly recommend it. Just get down into these forward phrases and see what you can learn about your own storytelling, because it might pop out and surprise you.
Yes.
And power words. So what are we looking at in terms of a kind of emotional spread here for the match?
Good question. I'm gonna say the suspense, you would expect fear and encouragement to take the top two, but the third is the question. There's a lot about woods, but is it gonna be like lust or forbidden? Or I'm gonna say forbidden. I'm probably gonna be way off.
Oh, very close, Daniel. Oh. You were kind of on the money with lust. This is a real interesting split.
There's actually a lot going on.
Yeah,
there's the third category is almost evenly split.
Yeah, exactly. Usually,
I should just guess them all. I would have gotten
it right. Yeah, just say everything. Usually, when we do this, we do tend to see kind of three dominant categories generally in the power words, but this one is interesting. Just like Daniel said, it's almost not even the third, but even the second, because encouragement is only just kind of pipping in there at the second, and the rest are all really close. So it's almost like a big block of fear, and then a huge mix as number two, all kind of vying for space there. So fear and encouragement. Fear, obviously, the suspense side. I'm sure people are dying and everything in this kind of thriller setup. Encouragement is the paciness, it's pulling us through the story. But mixed up in there, we have anger, lust, and greed, which is, again, speaking a lot to a kind of amped up thriller, which I guess this is. So I'm quite looking forward to reading it.
Yeah, it sure does. It has a lot of fear. It's intense. It does not give you a lot of. Often fear and encouragement can almost be even, because it's like it gives you a little bit and then it takes away a little bit. But that's a lot of fear. So this is a pretty dark story. It sounds
There's
like
usually a lot more kind of push pull, like you say there, and this hitting going all in on the fear. If anybody out there, if you have read this, obviously we haven't had a chance to read the whole novel yet. Let us know. Is it a pretty rough thriller?
Yeah.
And wrapping it up, getting to the end here, we're looking at readability. And like I said earlier, kind of giving a hint there, very, very accessible here. Flash reading E-score of 84. Nice. Usually we tend to see 80 kind of being the benchmark commercially now, which is very easy to read, very simple English. And here, when it comes to the Flash score, the higher it is, the more readable the work is. And sitting at 84 is a little above, kind of quote unquote, a little better than what we tend to see, that kind of benchmark for commercial fiction. So it's simple language, it's very plainly written, and I'm guessing that helps with the pace and everything as well. It just flows. It seems to just flow over you like a stream of water or something. I don't know what metaphor to use there. Oh, and on the next one we have our genre comparison score.
Ooh, okay. So let's go back to the first score. What was it? 71? Was that right?
Our first one.
71.09. So the question is when we pull it together into the what is it? Mystery and suspense is the genre.
It is mystery and suspense. Yeah.
Yeah, mystery and suspense. What is going to happen? Is it going to get closer?
Is it going to go up? Go down?
Is this author even more unusual when you compare to suspense? Yeah, I think it will go up. I think, but not. I don't know if it's going to go up as much, because I feel like there are some specific authorial quirks, for lack of a better word, that is giving it that score. I'm going to say 72. Let's see.
72.
73. And I think it's going to go up.
most of the time in comparisons, switching to a different profile, you don't tend to see a massive, mind-blowing jump. It'd be
No.
very unlikely to go from 71 to 86 or anything like that. But there's generally some kind of
Ooh,
shift. Do we have any guesses?
78. We have some high guesses now.
Oh,
74, 73. So, okay.
let's do it.
74.
74.
Ooh, Vanessa, you got it right on. Good job.
Well done. So yes, a bit of a jump upwards there. Like Daniel said, there'll be some things here that are just kind of quirks of the style
Yep.
that fit more closely to what we'd expect in a mystery or suspense novel. That's probably being a little more forgiving on the likes of the filler words and things like that. That kind
Uh-huh.
of benchmark will shift. So it's pulled our score up nicely to 74. So I guess that's the kind of benchmark for Harlan Coben's latest novel. And I think this is just a helpful little exercise to put it in context for your own work. Again, as
Yeah.
don't beat yourself up is
Nope.
always what I say.
Yeah.
If you with the work by the time you've fixed
Yeah.
what's been highlighted or left it alone, well, it is what it is.
Yeah. And it's the truth is it does just tell you in comparison to other books, right? So there are unusual elements to the style that's giving it that number. Now, here's something to keep in mind, though, is that it is easier to generally get away with bucking trends when you are already successful. So I'm curious, maybe we could do this at some point. Actually, that'd be a fun like revisit, right? We should go through like some of the lower AutoCrit scores and then like find their first book and see if actually their first books were more in line with normal. Sounds like a big project.
Possibly.
I'm giving this to the audience, and they're all like, "Oh yeah, you're gonna have to do that." Well, if you want it, comment below. That's a big project. But it would be really interesting, though, right? Because sometimes artists come in and they are a little bit more true to form, true to what's kind of, and then they kind of break out, find their own voice, get a little more experimental. I'm not saying
That's true.
and I have absolutely no reason to assume that's what happened in this situation. I'm just completely speculating. But it would be fun to find out.
I think it would. Yeah, that's a project we'll mark up. Let's see what we can do on that front.
Yeah, maybe at some point.
And that's it for the run through of the match. I hope it's been enlightening in some way, or just fun, fun geekery to see kind of what's going on in Harlan Coben's new book. If you have any questions or anything, feel free to pop them in the chat there before we finish. But otherwise,
Yep.
Oh, and if there's any upcoming books as well that are releasing over the next few months that you would like to see us actually do this for, maybe your favorite author has something new coming, let us know. Pop that in the comments, and we'll see if we can get a copy.
Here's a question. Hero's Journey. You've talked a little about Hero's Journey in the story. I'd like you to talk about Heroine's Journey described by Gail Carriger in your story. I am not familiar with that story theory. I will say when we talk about hero journey, we're not thinking of it gendered. We're just thinking of it as the main character. So whatever we would say would apply, or even no gender, no gender at all if it's an object or something. It's just how to make a main character that you're particularly engaged in. But that's an interesting work that's mentioned. I might check it out. I always love to read a story theory. So yeah, I might look into that and see what we can do with that.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll also look into that. I've not read the that one, Heroine's Journey. I will have a look.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the suggestion. Oh, apparently it's not gendered either. So it's gonna break my mind. I love stuff like that. Perhaps it's just an alternative hero's journey that's being described in such terms. Fantastic.
Yeah, it's like Step Aside, Joseph Campbell.
That's always good. Thank you so much. Very helpful. Oh, that's great. Here's a question. You said before that in the 80s is good and above that was not necessarily good, but it's 92. It started 89 and it got better as I cleaned the story. Did they do something wrong? It's not that getting too high is bad. It's just often what it means you're doing is you could be kind of making it a little bit too lean, a little bit too readable, for lack of a better word. Like it's about the ease of consuming the information and not enough about the artistry of the information. But I mean, we've had published works that were in the 90s before, haven't we, Gareth? I thought.
Yeah. I think the one we've seen that definitely breached the 90s was Dead Sea Rising by Jerry Jenkins. Yeah, the thing with the score there and what you're aiming for is entirely kind of personal, to you. It is very, very contextual. So for me, starting to push above 90, I guess a good way to illustrate this is go back to what we looked at today in terms of, when I was talking about all the that's in that paragraph, and you could decide, well, okay, I want to get rid of all that filler, and that's going to necessarily mean you're restructuring those sentences. It's building a different kind of voice, and that voice might be absolutely fine for you. It's like, great. That's going to push your score up. And if you're happy with the writing, you're happy with the writing. When it comes to another writer, and just talking from my own experience here, I would want to keep them. I'm just like, okay, that's the way I want to write it. That's the way I need the cadence to be for me, for my voice. And that means that I am going to ignore that. And therefore, my score is not going to go up because I'm not going to get rid of them. In which case, that puts me, my personal kind of barometer, somewhere between 80 and 90. I find if I start to push a bit too much above 90 that I'm stripping out the voice. It doesn't sound the way I want it to sound anymore. But that's, again, entirely a personal thing. So if you're finding you get it up to 92.44 and you're feeling really good about it, that's actually made things better for you, wonderful. Absolutely wonderful.
That's great. Yeah, what you might find, though, is we tell you not to let the software bully you, right? And so if you are chasing that score and then you go back and you read it and you're like, there's something about this, it feels a little bland or a little ordinary. Well, perhaps maybe you kind of strip it down a little bit too much. So, it's something to keep in mind. But obviously, if you like it, right? And if you like it and it gives you a high score, well, that probably just means it's very
Everyone's
easy to read. Yeah, exactly, right? Won't literary fiction be much higher than genre fiction in terms of the score? I would say actually probably not. And the reason why is because literary fiction often is a lot more about the craft of writing than genre fiction, not to stereotype, but genre fiction tends to be more about conveying the information, and it can get rather invisible in terms of the prose. Now, not always. Some genre fiction is quite dense, but often that isn't the case. Whereas literary fiction, often what it's talking about is maybe a little bit more ordinary, but it's the manner in which it's being talked about that's the charm of the genre. So I would say I would expect them to be lower.
Yeah, I would generally expect it to be a little lower on the literary side of things, simply because it tends to be more dense. There's a lot more going into the prose there, but that's the style.
Yep.
So
that's what you're signing up for.
Tammy, oh yeah, it's for the snafu and they want action, so I tightened it lean and made more action, I think. Yeah, that's exactly what they're looking for on that one. You want to have it simple, easy to understand, and just action, action, action.
Yep. Especially if you're, reaching an audience for the first time, right? Because you want to make it as easy for them to find you accessible as possible. Because to some degree, I'm not saying you have to sell out or something, but put your best foot forward. If you have a bunch of different ideas for a project, you may want to go with the safer one to start out with, and then the more experimental ones a little bit later. Not to mention something that's a little bit more similar to what is out there already is less likely to go awry, kind of like when you're cooking, trying more of the tried and true recipes before you experiment a little bit more. A better look at my shirt.
Mustard.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, he's not wearing a green one today, so he's not.
I'm not. Somebody did mention they liked the disembodied head. We have not forgotten about the disembodied head, and we may, in fact, it may come back. So if you like my disembodied head, please like, subscribe, hit the bell, and you might very well see a disembodied Daniel head.
Yeah,
somebody asked, where do you find
the bell? And
where do you find the Power Words report? What is it under? What
category? Power Words is under. Let me just pop the.
I know. I wanted to answer, and then I was like, I'm worried I'm going to say the wrong thing.
Yeah, it's in the word choice category.
That's what I thought. Okay.
The last one at the end brings up your Power Words.
And
Power Words can be handy as well to look at passages, not just the summary. Like we looked at the summary today to see the breakdown, but it can be really, really handy. It also highlights inside the text. Let me see if I can share that without it causing my browser to go crazy. Let me bring this back in here. Looking at the Power Words, where I find they can be really handy is, where was it? Here we are. So we have our breakdown, but also we'll highlight inside the text, based on what kind of Power Words you're looking at. And you can toggle them on and off here with regards to the highlights. So for example, if you have a scene that you've written that you want to be a scary scene, it's like this is your big terror set piece, you can actually look through that whole section and check, the highlights. What kind of words are you using? Are you using words that tend to be associated with fear, that's kind of stoke fear intrinsically? And if you're not, if your big scary set piece is actually full of words that kind of feel safe, well, you're going to want to change that and switch them out. That can be really, really fun exercise.
Yep. Somebody asked, I write literary fiction easy, but I want to write more genre. How can I learn to do that? That is a great suggestion for a topic, transitioning from literary fiction to genre fiction, and the differences, right? How different are they? We'll keep that in mind. That's a great topic. So just stay tuned. We'll come back to that. That's like a whole thing to do it properly.
Superb.
All right, so Gareth,
Tammy mentioned the last one there is personal words and phrases. That might be your browser. If it's zoomed in too far, try zooming your browser size out a bit, and you may see power words just kind of sliding in.
Oh, right. It's hiding on you. Okay. So Gareth, do we have any events coming around in the AutoCrit world this week?
We do. And this Friday, for members only, we have the wonderful, wonderful Lynn Hansen, who is a fantastic book cover artist. She's coming to treat us all to a book cover bonanza, as we're calling it, where she will be giving us a presentation on kind of book cover design, what to look for and everything, and also giving some feedback on people's covers. So we have a link inside Mighty Networks. If you're an AutoCrit Pro member, have a look at the events list inside the community, the private community area, and there will be a form there where you can attach your cover. And if you upload it there for us, we'll run through it on Friday and give you some pointers from a pro.
That's awesome. So yeah, if you are not an AutoCrit member, this is a great time to become one, because you can sign up, join the community, RSVP for the event, and get feedback from a professional artist, perhaps. Cool. That's really cool. I'm really excited to that. I love that kind of stuff. And we haven't really done something like that, at least not in a while, like cover feedback. So that's exciting.
Yeah, it's been a while since we last had Lynn in. I'm really looking forward to it. Lynn is such a wonderful person and very, very talented. So it'll be really great fun.
All right. And then, of course, we will be back here next week, Tuesday, same time, to continue talking about writing tips and tricks and anything that you might want to hear about. And if you're watching a replay, please feel free to comment. Let us know some of the topics that you would like to see, because we want to give you the content that you're looking for, whatever answers to whatever questions you're dealing with. We're just speculating here on what you might want to watch because we're geeks too. So we generally have an idea, but it's always helpful to hear from you on what it is that you would like to hear. So please let us know. And again, subscribe, hit the bell, share with your friends, join us here on AutoCrit. And until next time, well, get back to writing, everybody.
Yeah, incoming 30 comments saying, I want to see Daniel's disembodied head floating around.
You know what? You do that and it'll definitely happen.
Thanks, everybody. And we'll see you next time.
Yes, bye.